All right, guys. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Jeff Gibby here. I'm going to be doing your class tonight. I'm really excited. It's a new class for me. Hopefully we're going to be right in time. And welcome. And welcome, Dehu from Canada. Let me go ahead and, as you know, if you've ever been to a MetaStock class or a MetaStock presentation or a MetaStock anything, you get the pleasure of hearing this legal disclaimer, which I dream about, actually. I've read it probably 350 times. But today's demonstration is designed to instruct you on using MetaStock and the accompanying software plugins. It's not a recommendation to buy or sell, but rather guidelines to interpreting and using specific indicators and features within the software. The information, software, and techniques presented should only be used by investors who are aware of the risk inherent in trading. Thomson Reuters shall have no liability for any investment decisions based on the use of the software, any trading strategies, or any information provided in connection with the company. I also want to make it really clear that we're not going to be recommending anything today. Personally, on a personal level, I'm not really even licensed or authorized or have the appropriate authority to tell you anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my best to kind of explain some concepts that Price uses in his methodology and how they implement into MetaStock, and we're going to go from there. Okay. Now, just let me, I'm going to go ahead, you'll notice that I have a lot of text-heavy slides that I won't read from, and that's just generally how I teach. You can read this if you want to, but let me tell you a little bit about Price Headley. And in order to do that, I think most effectively, I need to tell you a little bit about me. As a individual that works for Thomson Reuters, I've actually been employed, as of this year, 15 years for the company, and I can say it's a great place to work. I can also say at this point, I probably have what I think is probably one of the most fun jobs in the entire MetaStock organization. For the first 10 years of my career or so at Thomson Reuters, I was actually a sales guy. And right now I'm in charge of business development for MetaStock. And what that means, in a nutshell, is I contact people like Price Headley. And I had known Price because I'd worked on the phones for a very long time. And he had a very good reputation in the market, still does. And I called him up one day and I said, Price, my name is Jeff Gibby. I work for a company called MetaStock. I understand you do have some really good technical approaches in the market, and I have an idea about a product we can build together, and I think it's something that's going to be well received by both your students and by my customers. And I think we should do business, and that's kind of how the call started. He agreed, actually. After we talked a little bit, we went through a lot of details. He agreed that we should do some business together. It took us probably, I want to say, we had a kind of tight time schedule. We spent probably, I want to say, 6 months, but we condensed it down to 4 months. We just worked an extra 2 months to get everything done. And a lot of the coding that was happening for the application, the manual was pulled together by me. A lot of work went into actually creating this product, and a lot of personally extra hours that were put into this. I'm incredibly good at enunciation. Now, I'm incredibly proud of this product. It's something that is one of the things that I think has been just an accomplishment that you get super proud of. I learned a lot about Price's methodologies both during the creation of the actual product and afterwards. Last year, it's funny, last year I flew him down to talk to a little bit of an options group that we have here in Northern California in the San Francisco area, and we had him teach a presentation, and I learned even some new things. So my goals for today's class are pretty specific. I have no intention of making you understand all of the big trend tools methodologies. Price does a great job of that, and if you want to trade stocks and if you want to trade options and you want somebody that has a great reputation, is a registered stock trainer, or not a registered, is actually a Timer Digest #1 for many, many years, he is a person to look to. I also say, from a matter of knowing what he does, that I have a lot of respect for him, and I would, without reservation, recommend what he does. The goals for my class is to kind of talk to you a little bit about some concepts of big trends in terms of some of the things that they teach the students. And there's a lot of stuff that we're just not going to be able to talk about in an hour. And so my goal is to kind of talk, help you understand what the concept is, and then show you really this product that I'm very, very proud of and that I helped write and we helped put together and create. So I will do my best to answer questions as they pertain to the materials. If you have questions and you ask them, I will kind of keep an eye on the chat and I will answer it. Okay. If I miss a question, well then I think your best strategy is I didn't ignore you necessarily, ask your question again. If it's something that's going to be take us too far off of the path that I've laid out for us today, I'll just tell you to drop me a message or call me and we'll talk about it offline, if that makes sense. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started. That's my opinion of price. So let me talk a little bit about the product we created and kind of where we're going. Okay? So actually, I meant to move this particular slide. We're going to jump back to this one, but I meant to move that. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Big Trend Toolkit. Here's a picture of the manuals. I've actually highlighted in yellow, or actually in orange, what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about acceleration bands. We're going to talk about efficiency ratios. We're going to talk about a couple of my favorites for finding good opportunities, the percentage above long-term scans. Okay, so those are what we're going to kind of highlight. My goal, again, is not to make you an expert on what an acceleration band is, although I want to give you some education about it, but to show you really kind of how, if you know how to use acceleration bands, how you would use that with MetaStock in the Big Trend Toolkit. These are the following systems, and again, I've highlighted the ones specifically that we're going to talk about, and the reason I've done that is I want you to understand that everything that I'm going to show you today, this is a 1-hour class, hopefully. Everything I'm going to show you today isn't entirely big trends. There's a lot of stuff that we're not going to talk about. Okay, and so the ones that are highlighted, we're going to address, we're going to talk about them, we're going to kind of talk about the methodology behind them and how they're implemented into MetaStock. Make sense for everybody? I hope so. Let's go back to that slide that I moved, but I didn't upload after I moved it. And we'll just talk a little bit about this. I mean, obviously, you know, it's a very, very big thing. I say it all the time in all of my classes. You know, the trend is your friend, befriend the trend, rising tide lifts all boat. Price's view on the trend is a little bit different and something that I actually quite respect. You know, Price takes a different methodology where, you know, he's an option trader. And not only that, he's a top performing option trader and a market expert, if I can call him that. I think I can. But, you know, he says, well, you know, there's tons and tons of opportunities that exist in the marketplace. They're everywhere. As an option trader, there's nearly 3,800 stocks I could trade. There's 3,800 stocks I could take options on. But as a trader, I want to look for things that are very, very efficient to trade. I want to look for the best opportunities. I'm willing to step over 10 good opportunities for a great opportunity. And think about that for a minute as to how that would pertain to life. You know, as somebody that comes in and do my job, I try and focus on the things that are going to make Thomson Reuters the most money. You know, in your profession, you probably do the same thing. What we want to do when we're looking at trading is we want to take an example and say, okay, well, there is tons of money here. There's tons of opportunity that exists in the market. How are we going to find the best opportunity? And really, he's done a very, very good job of that. He's been researching the markets for more than 20 years. It was 20 years ago when we started working together, and I'm sure it's probably, if my math in my head is right, around 26 years. So how do we take the 3,800 stocks that are optionable and decide on what is the best opportunity? Let's not take any opportunity that comes along. Let's get the opportunities that make the most sense, and we're really going to swing after those ones. We're really going to skip opportunities that might make us a little money to look for the ones that are going to find us the biggest opportunities. And so in that kind of vernacular, the term big trend makes absolute sense. That's exactly what he's looking for. Let's not find trending stocks. Let's find stocks with very, very big trends. So now we're going to start to talk a little bit more about the indicators and how that works. I'm going to go ahead and advance back to where I wanted that slide. The first indicator and methods that I want to talk about is acceleration. Okay, and again, I've got a bunch of text on the screen, and I'm not going to read it. You can read it if you want to. But you know, if we think about acceleration for a minute, if we want to find stocks that are in a trend, we want to find stocks that aren't just in a trend. We want to find stocks that are actually accelerating into a trend. Okay, so we don't want to find just a stock that's been in a trend. We want it to be picking up speed or picking up momentum, and that's the point for acceleration bands. The calculation for acceleration bands is in MetaStock. He fully discloses the work, but it was a little more complicated than I actually wanted to go through in the demo today. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up a chart here of the QQQs, and we're going to talk a little bit about the characteristics of the acceleration bands. And after we do that and kind of explain what the rules are for the acceleration bands, I'm going to actually pull up MetaStock and show you how you would view that in the software and how you would use that to identify trading opportunities using acceleration bands. Okay, so I think you'd all agree with me. This is a chart of the QQQs, because I put it right here on the chart for you. It has a midline. The midline is just a simple moving average. I believe it's a 20-period moving average. You'll notice that the upper and lower bands, kind of like Bollinger Bands, they'll adjust for volatility. So when we have a very, very clearly defined trend, they're going to get narrower. When the trend starts to get a little bit more choppy, and I can't explain the math behind this, I could if I went and remembered how we coded it, but as the trends get a little bit more choppy, they're going to spread out or widen out. Okay, so those are kind of the characteristics of what an acceleration band would look in a chart. And the way we would read that, if we were following the way Price teaches to use his acceleration bands, is for a buy signal, we would look for 2 days above the market price. So today's close and yesterday's close must be above the upper band, and that would be a signal for us to get in. The same is true with short. This is a shortable system. Not all the ones that we're going to talk about you can take shorts on, but as a shortable system, we can take, as long as today's close and yesterday's close are below the bands, that would be a signal based on Bollinger Bands to go ahead, or I'm sorry, acceleration bands, to go ahead and take an entry position. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you some examples in MetaStock. Okay, so what I need you guys to do is I want you to all start shouting if I talk for 10 or 15 minutes and you're not looking at a chart and I'm talking about a chart. Can you do that for me? I'm going to take that as a yes. You guys can type in answers here. Okay. So when you guys can see a chart of the QQQ, let me know. This is the same chart that was in my PowerPoint. Just want to talk a little bit about, actually I'm going to take the acceleration bands off there and show you how they're actually applied in MetaStock. For those of you, and I think there was about half, if I remember right, from when I was doing the polling that don't have MetaStock. Well, we're going to give you a free trial on the program if you want it. And my goal today is to convince you that Big Trend Toolkit is something that you should want. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and take the acceleration bands off of this chart. I'll just do that, a delete. And what I'm going to do is, in MetaStock, we've got this indicator quick list. I've already pulled up the stock I want to look at. In this case, we're looking at the QQQs. And I'm going to find acceleration bands. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab this. I'm going to drag it onto my chart, and I just drop it where I want it to be. In other words, I want it right here on the chart. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it right here on the chart. Okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and change that to blue because I like the middle line to be blue. You guys might have other preferences, but that's how I like to look at it. So, again, you can see as we get a little bit choppier, the bands will widen out. Very, very similar to Bollinger Bands. Again, we have the midline, we have an upper band and a lower band. And to identify the buy signal in MetaStock, all we would do is we would look for 2 consecutive closes above that band. Okay, so what I'm going to do is going to switch over here. We're going to take a bit of a look here. Here we have the close was, can't even see the close here, but I think it was right on top of that, right underneath that band. Here we have a close that was above the band. Here we have a close that was above the band. So this would be based on the Bollinger Bands, or based on the, I gotta stop saying that, as Bollinger Bands. Based on the acceleration bands, this is the setup or the trigger that we're looking at. Okay? And so I can read that in MetaStock, I can find that. I've also got what we call an expert advisor commentary. And to get to the expert advisor commentary, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this expert advisor guy. And I'm going to wait for that to load. Just like we had with the indicators, everything is pretty well matched up. We have all of the systems that were in that PowerPoint. We have the acceleration bands, the Bollinger Bands plus acceleration bands, the efficiency ratio, which we'll cover, and a bunch of stuff that we won't talk about. But all of these methodologies, I think there's a total of 14 or 15, are programmed into the system. So if I wanted to be able to see this buy signal actually on a chart, all I had to do is I have to go to the Expert Advisor, I click on Attach, and what it's going to do is every time that happens on a chart, it's going to give me a little buy signal. So right here, I guess this close was just above the Bollinger Band, or the going to make a note. Acceleration band is going to paint that buy on the chart for us. Okay, so now how, as a trader, can I use that if I wanted to trade that particular system? And we put a lot of work into this part of it. If I'm a trader, and I have MetaStock, and I've identified this as an opportunity on the chart because it told me that right now we had 2 closes above that acceleration bands, I can come actually into the Expert Advisor. I go into this commentary here, and it's going to actually tell me, I'm going to move the commentary. The commentary by default is to that very last day. I'm going to move it right here. And what it's going to tell me is, okay, on today, right now we're ignoring all of this data, and obviously this was a good signal. It's going to ignore all the remaining data, but if we were just looking at this today, it would say the acceleration bands is, and I'm going to make this a lot bigger, because we put a lot of work into kind of matching this up with what they talk about, or what Price talks about and how he works. And I thought I could just out and scroll, but it's not making the text any bigger. So anyway, I'll read this out loud in terms of the parts that I think are applicable for you. It says the acceleration band system is currently indicating a long opportunity. If this bar's close and the prior bar close are both greater, then you're going to get this long opportunity. Okay. Now we also wanted to kind of put some really good information in about how you might take advantage of that opportunity. And we have to be careful about how we do that, being the fact that, you know, it's an educational product to help you understand the system and not telling you you should buy now. So we said if you're interested in taking advantage of this opportunity, you should look at buying the stock. Okay? If you're a stock trader, you'd go ahead and buy the stock at this point. If you're an option trader, you could consider buying a call option in the second expiration month. These signals last generally from 1 to 20 days. If you're a very aggressive option trader, you typically look at call options that are 1 strike or 2 strikes out of the money or near the money. So what we tried to do is we tried to come in here and identify where this opportunity was taking place. We tried to give you a very, very clear idea of how many days this opportunity would probably last for, and different ways you could take advantage of the opportunity if that's what you chose to do. Okay. Now, we also provided plenty of rules. Okay, you should look to get out of the position if this happens. Any futures bar closes less than the upper Bollinger band, or upper acceleration band. I can't even read it right. Any bars closes under the 10-bar exponential moving average, or on the close 3 weeks, close 2 weeks before the expiration date. Most usually the first Friday of the expiration month. While most conservative exit strategies are effective, we found that the adaptive exit that enables more flexibility in price movements, an acceleration band exit will be generated based on the 10 band. So we give you a lot of options, but we do say, okay, well, when it happens to get above the exponential moving average, we're going to go ahead and tell you to get out of the stock. Okay, and so if we looked at this particularly on a chart, here's where it kind of penetrated, where we got our buy signal. We had a very nice run up. It penetrated that 10-period exponential moving average, which caused us to get out of the stock. Okay, I would say a couple things about this example, and the reason I chose this as a particular example is not because it was profitable. It actually happened to be that the chart I was looking at when I pulled together the PowerPoint was QQQs. So that's why we are actually looking at this one. I'm sure there's examples that don't work. In fact, we can look at this chart and see exactly, you know, here was one that didn't work. It's not always effective, but it did a pretty good job of getting us out and limiting our losses and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, and so that's how an expert advisor works. Basically, the idea is we've taken Price's rules, we've implemented them in our expert advisor system to tell you, okay, this is happening on the chart based on the acceleration bands. This is when you should buy. This is when you should look to get out. These are the different ways that you can go. Okay. Now, we never set out to make this a replacement for his class, although we did put a lot of the methods and the rules into both the manual that comes with it, which I wrote, and we put a lot of the methods and rules and systems and ideas into the expert in terms of trying to give you a good understanding, because we wanted you to be able to use Big Trend Toolkit if you weren't an expert with Big Trends Toolkit. But we never intended it to replace all of the classes and stuff that he went through. And again, I would recommend that you go through those if you're looking for something that's good and based around stocks and options and finding good trends in stocks and options. So now on this particular QQQ chart, you'll notice that right now, I can't trade back here. Right now, there isn't an opportunity for me to take a long position or a short position. So one of the other things that we did as part of the toolkit, and as part of the things we can do in MetaStock, is we went and we put together a scanner. We already have an explorer in MetaStock. And if I click on this pair of binoculars, it's going to go ahead and allow me to scan through and find any of the stocks that are currently above the acceleration bands for 2 days or below the acceleration bands for 2 days. In order to run that, again, I just come to acceleration bands here. I click on Explore. And right now I've got, I believe this is the S&P 500 loaded in. I could be wrong, but it almost doesn't. Actually, I think this is all of the optionable stocks. I'll know as soon as I click OK here. And oh, it is the S&P 500 because it's going to scan through 493 stocks. So it's only the S&P 500, but I could do the full optionables. And what this is doing is saying, is there any stocks that currently have an acceleration bands buy signal? Richard asks, Ed says the audio is bad, I'm sorry. Richard says, have you found a white background is better than black? That may take us off topic, but actually I do prefer a white background, and it's because when we did a lot of work with JCPR, it says it's just cleaner. I like it better than having a black background, and I've switched to a white background, both in my presentations that I do and in my charts. So I do like having a white background. I find it's better. Richard says, can you run a system test on this? Oh, for us. Well, you can run a system test on this, and I don't think I'm going to, but we can run it for you offline. I have a lot of stuff that I want to go through. I'm looking at the clock. I'm seeing about a half an hour, and that tells me I need to pick up the pace a little bit, but you can run a system test with Big Trend Toolkit. Let me go ahead and click on Reports here. And so right here we have a list of securities. Okay. Basically, if it has a buy right here, a buy signal, that's something I could take a buy. That's something that has currently a buy signal for acceleration bands on the chart today. If it has a 1 under the short column, then all of these stocks right here actually have a short. So that quickly I was able to go through the S&P 500. I was able to kind of identify some stocks that have an acceleration buy signal or an acceleration short signal. Okay. Very, very simple, very effective, and certainly I would say that this is a lot faster than, let's say, running through 500 stocks and looking at them. We were able to pull them up that quick. So it's a very, very good prospecting tool as a result. Okay. That concludes what I want to say about acceleration bands and how they work. Okay. The big points that I wanted to get across for as I'm talking is number one, it's a very good tool. Number two, it's very good in terms of the explanation. We certainly spend a lot of time on that. And it's a very good prospecting tool as well. I mean, we were able to, you can go in and say, out of all of the optionable stocks, which ones hit these. So that's what I wanted to get across. I hope I was able to convey that. Now I want to change gears a little bit and talk about efficiency for a minute, and the efficiency mechanisms and what that indicator is and what it does. Willie likes white too. Willie, let's be friends on Facebook. Look me up. Okay. Again, a definition. I love dictionary.com, and I don't have any idea what definition number 4 means on here. I have no idea, although there was a clickable link, and I think I'm going to go see what an efficiency apartment is. But the way I like to talk about efficiency is quite simple. Okay, I'm sure many of you in the room have been on a freeway with a few cars on it. Okay, I'm sure many of you have been on a freeway with a lot of cars on it. And you can disagree if you haven't. I'll just paint a little bit of a picture. If you have a few cars and traffic is flowing smoothly and traffic is flowing effectively, then you'd be efficient in terms of the amount of energy you propel to get somewhere. In other words, you're not going to be slamming on the brakes a lot. You're going to be going at a reasonable rate of speed, and you're going to get to where you're going a lot faster. I think you'd all agree with that. I'm not even going to ask you to agree with it. It's just something that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Similarly, if you're on a traffic and you're moving at 2 miles an hour, you're going to be accelerating more. You're going to be stopping more. You're not going to be getting to where you're going as efficiently. Okay. And the way that we read that, that's the way I like to explain efficiency. How fast can we get to where we're going as quickly as possible and with as little headache as possible? And that's a concept that traders call efficiency. Okay. Now there's actually an indicator that Price uses. This isn't one of Price's indicators, like he didn't make this indicator up. It was developed by Kaufman, and he uses it a lot in the systems that you use. Basically, here's the calculation. If you take your efficiency ratio is your price change. So if a price moves from 10 to 20, for example, that would be 10. And you'll divide that by the sum of all of the price changes as positive values. So what that means is if it went from 5 to 7 to 3 to 8 to 11 to 10, then your efficiency, it's not moving in a very clearly established trend. You're bouncing all over the place, right? What we want to find is we want to be able to find stocks that are accelerating into a trend like we just talked about and moving efficiently in that trend. And that's where the efficiency indicator comes into place, and that's how he uses it in his applications, in his methods. Okay, I've got a chart of Apple. Perhaps you guys have heard of Apple. You're never going to have a stock that runs a perfect efficiency. Okay, what we're trying to measure is how efficiently we're moving. A perfect rating would be 100. Okay. In Apple, I drew this little number on here. You may not be able to see it very clearly in your PowerPoint slide, but I would say during the middle of this very, very dynamic, very, very efficient trend, you'll notice that I put 76 on the chart. That only ever topped out at 76. Now, we don't trade it when it gets to 76, but you're never going to have perfect efficiency. There's always going to be pullbacks. But what we want to identify on a chart is that are we moving efficiently? Are we moving efficiently in the trend that we want to follow? And so that's the indicator and the methods that we talk about when we talk about efficiency. It's this calculation. How much price changes happened and how much wiggle did we have on the way there? In other words, how many times do we have to stop, wait for the guy in front of us to move, and then move again? Okay. Because if we can move efficiently in trading, remember Price says we have 3,800 options. Let's make effective use of our money and let's make efficient moves in our money. If a stock goes from 10 to 20 and you bought it, great. If that took 3 days, even better. If it took 6 months, well, I would say that was worse. How can we move with efficiency? And the point of this indicator is to help you find stocks that are moving efficiently. Okay? Oh, an efficient apartment is a one-room apartment. Thanks, Tony. Okay. So this indicator, I didn't point this out on the chart, but we're going to go into MetaStock. I'm going to show you how that works, and I'm going to basically show you. But it goes above 30. The levels that he looks for is he looks for anything that's above an efficiency level of 30. Okay. Once it crosses 30, he looks for an exceed of the high on that day that the cross happens. So for example, if it crossed up above 30 yesterday, he would take a note of today's high. And as long as that stock moves up above that high the next day, and closes above it, so it doesn't have to just go up and come back down, it has to close above it, he would use that as a buy signal for his efficiency indicator. Okay, does that make sense? I hope it does. Same thing for this sell signal, except for we're going to wait for it to go below 30. Okay, once it goes below 30, we're going to look at the low of the day, and we're going to make sure that it closes below that low of the day where the cross happened. Very simple, very easy to implement. Let's take a look at how that would work on a chart for you. And again, it's going to take a second for me to go back to start to share MetaStock. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you can see MetaStock now. We're still looking at QQQs. We're going to transition over to Apple. And I just need a yes or a no. Okay, perfect. One will work. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and undock this expert advisor real quick. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this chart, and we're going to go ahead and look at Apple for a few minutes. I'm just going to talk a little bit about kind of how this would work on a chart, and how you'd apply the indicator and how you'd look for it. Okay, so what I'm right here, again, they all start with BTTK, meaning Big Trend Toolkit. I'll find the indicator that's called efficiency ratio. I'll go ahead and apply that to a chart. And I've got a value that goes from -30, or -100 to 100, and never quite peaks out at 100. So if we were looking at finding an opportunity for a cross, or an opportunity for a sell signal, what we'd be looking at is we'd be looking for this cross right above 30 right here. I'm going to say that this is the day that I crossed. Okay, I could be off by a day or two, but I don't think I am. Okay, and the way that we're going to read this particular signal is the second that that starts to move efficiently in the trend, and I'm just going to pop it out a bit. The second that that starts to move efficiently in the trend, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a note of this day's high, okay, which wasn't very much higher. And if it moves above that high for that particular day, I'm going to go ahead and buy into the stock. Okay, now how do I buy into the stock? Well, I'm going to follow Price's rules since it's his method. And the best way I can show you Price's rules is to go into the expert advisor here. I'm going to go into the efficiency ratio. I'm going to go ahead and attach that to the chart. I'll click on close. Oh, look, here's an alert. We're going to go ahead and skip that alert because that's at the very end of our chart. But it looks like we'd be getting out of an Apple position today. I'll click on OK. And what I'm going to say is I'm going to go ahead and attach the expert advisor here. I'm going to go to the commentary. Okay, the efficiency ratio is again indicating, I need to move the system over, indicating a long opportunity, and this is why it's happening. It closed above yesterday's high, and yesterday's high was a cross. If you're interested in taking advantage of this opportunity, you'll buy the stock. Or if you want to do an option trade, intermediate long-term options, because this can last 3 to 4 months. And these signals will typically last 1 to 8 weeks. If you're very aggressive, you can do this. Okay? Now notice we say you can do this. We're not telling you specifically to do it. We're just telling you different ways that you can use it. Okay? You should look to exit this opportunity or this position when the close falls below the low on the day the efficiency ratio drops below 30. So that's how we'd get out. If it crosses down below 30 and it goes down, which is what happened right here. See, there was a cross. If it went down below the low of this day, we'd go ahead and exit, but that didn't happen. Okay? Then we talk a little bit about price. We talk a little bit more about price, but right here is where you're going to get the meat of the information about how to apply this signal. Okay, and then of course as that particular signal comes to an end, okay, which wasn't for quite some time, you're going to be told by the software to get out. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I hope that's very clear for you guys. It's certainly not very hard to do. Now I want to point out something that's something I hope you should be able to implement on your own, certainly. Now I want to point out something a little bit kind of off the beaten path, if you would. I could come in and I could show you how to run a scan on that, but we already did that. I wanted to leave that expert on there. Let me attach that again. Okay, we'll leave that expert advisor on there. I want to point out something with this particular setup. If I look right here, there's a signal, and that wasn't a very good one. I certainly say that probably wasn't the best opportunity in the entire marketplace that particular day. But we're just using efficiency at this point. We had this efficient move, and I would say that's a really, really good trade. We had a couple that were a little bit of fake outs. Here's a bad one, and here's a bad one that I want to talk about, okay? Let me say if I wanted to incorporate the concept of efficiency, but I would say it would be better to also incorporate the concept of acceleration. So in other words, wouldn't it be nice if not only were we moving efficiently in a trend, wouldn't it be nice if we could also say, well, we want it to be accelerating into that trend as well? So we talked about acceleration. Let me just show you let's just go ahead and play with that idea for a minute. Let me throw the acceleration bands on here. I'm going to paint the line blue, okay? And right here, we wouldn't have had a short opportunity here based on acceleration bands. Right here, we wouldn't have had an opportunity, I don't think. We might have. But right now we can identify the stocks that not only are moving efficiently in the direction that we want, but also are accelerating. We can see that very visually on a chart. And the reason I've specifically brought this up is because, as those of you that have been through Price's classes know, he doesn't use a single system as a way to trade. He actually combines indicators. He'll look at, okay, is this accelerating and also moving efficiently? Should we look at that as a possible way to get into a trade? Yeah, absolutely. I'd say that if you have a stock that's accelerating into a trend plus it's moving efficiently, that would be a better candidate. But that's just a personal opinion. I want to show you how you would do that in MetaStock using a scan. Okay, so in other words, I'll go ahead and pop up the exploration here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run that acceleration band again. But what I'm going to do is I'm also going to run the efficiency scan all at the same time. Actually, I'm going to take this middle one out. So what I'm saying is I want to look at the S&P 500, and I want to find all of the stocks that are either accelerating into a trend, and then out of the ones that are accelerating into that trend, I want them to find them that are efficiently moving into the trend. Okay. I want to do both at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Explore. Okay. I'll do the acceleration bands first. I'll do the efficiency ratio second. I'll click OK. Let's do the S&P 500. I'm not sure if that's going to be too specific or not for what we're looking at. And I do want to say one thing. And this is important. It's going to run both of those scans for me. Okay, but those scans are designed to find stocks that have acceleration bands and efficiency bands both ways. So if you do this scan, it will save you time. But what you'll want to do is you want to open up the charts and take a look at the acceleration bands and the efficiency bands to make sure that they're giving the same signal. Most of the time they will be, but you want to make sure that they're both pointing in the same direction. I'm sure that makes sense to you. Okay, so out of the stocks that are accelerating, you remember that big list that we had? They were either accelerating up or down. These ones were also moving efficiently. So these are both short criteria. We could open those up. We could pull those with the acceleration bands. We could take a look at it and make sure we're comfortable with it. But again, we just went through 500 stocks. We put in 2 criteria, and we have a list of 2 stocks. Something that can save you time, and it's an incredibly useful tool. Okay. Let's see if we have any questions, because I'm going to change gears now. I'm going to talk about my best trade ever. This recording is going to be recording, or I am recording this. We're going to paste it up on YouTube, and we'll send you a link as long as you're registered. Looks like we had a couple questions like that. Charles asked, can you apply 2 experts at the same time? You can't, but you could, because everything's open, if you spend a little bit of time, you could combine experts. That would require a little bit of copy and pasting. One of the things that, I'm going to say this while I'm thinking about it, I had a note to talk about it. One of the things I really, really like about this particular add-on, and I will say that I am not biased. This is probably the only add-on that I've went in and created expert commentaries and wrote a manual for. I've put a lot of sweat equity into this particular product. But one of the things I really like about it is it's simple. The concepts that I'm talking about, if I'm doing a fairly decent job, and I think I am, are easy to understand. It's very method-based, so we know that what we're looking for, we understand what we're looking for. It's very clearly spelled out for us. It's also open. And I remember having the conversation with Price. I was like, Price, if you want, we can password protect these formulas. People can't understand what's going on in the system. Or I can leave it open, and the advantages to that is that people could be able to go in and see what's happening. They could tweak them a little bit. They could combine things. And Price, being the gentleman that he is, he's all, you know what? If they bought it, I want to make sure that they understand it, that they can implement it, that they can make changes to what we're doing. And I think it's important that we make it open. I agreed with him, and it's an open product. There's no passwords on there. You can go in and we could click on the actual acceleration bands, and it would show you the code. And that's one thing that I like a lot about the system. I got off on a tangent. That's not unlike me. Carlos says, does MetaStock provide these tools, or does Big Trends provide them? You can buy them from either source, and I'm going to give you a bit of a discount on it today. Carlos asks, it is an add-on. Big Trends ToolKit is actually $4.99. So But we'll talk about that a little bit as we get to it. Okay, so I'm going to change gears a little bit because I like to tell stories, number one. Number two, I think it greatly illustrates one of the concepts that I want to talk about. And so we're going to talk about the story of my best trade ever. And then I'm going to tell you about the worst trade ever. And here's some components of them. They were 2 days apart, and they were on the same stock, Taser. Do you guys know Taser? It's, okay, so I'll just tell you who Taser is. It doesn't really matter, but Taser is a stock company that basically does non-lethals. It's the Taser gun, okay? And it got a patent on its Taser gun. Got a big contract. I don't know what the news was behind it, but it's a stock that got a lot of attention. Okay, this, as best as I can remember, and I'm pretty sure about the day I bought and I'm pretty sure about the day I sold, was a stock that I had a customer that was very, very avidly trading it. Okay, and so I started to watch it, and this was a customer that I talked to fairly routinely for some reason. I mean, I talked to him a lot, and he'd always come in and he's like, "Man, you should see what Taser is doing today. It's going parabolic. You should be looking at this particular stock. It's going off like a rocket." And I'd be like, "Well, okay, yeah, but it's moved from," and you know, this stock has been split several times. I think it was around 50 or 60 bucks. This is a long time ago. But at the time, and let's say it had gone from 50 to 60 or 50 to 70. I'm like, wow, okay, that's an incredibly good move. But that move has got to be over. I mean, it's just not going to continue to move parabolic like this. At some point, gravity is going to kick in. The sellers are going to come. People are going to take profits. And this stock is going to go back down to where it was. And certainly, I'm not going to buy anything that's going to do that. And I think it's going to do it soon, so I'm not going to buy this stock. Okay? And I talked to him over the months, and I continued to have that mentality. You'll see the thing runs up. It'll get flat for a little bit, and then it'll move parabolic again. And he kept saying, "You should buy this. You should buy this. You should buy this." No. Look at where it's moved to. That's insanity. It is simply not going to keep this momentum going. This went on for the period of months. Okay, you start to see the chart here. It went on for months. This is just insane. There is no way this stock can continue to rise in the direction that it's going. It's not going to keep going up. You're going to get burned. I would suggest you take your profits. And so finally one day I'm like, okay, I've been telling you for months you're wrong. I'm going to buy this stock. We're going to buy this stock. I'll go ahead and buy a bunch of shares. I mean, I'll take a big thing because obviously you're right. This thing is going to continue to rise. But I'm going to tell you what. When this was this day, I wanted to tell myself to stop right here. This was this day. I'll tell you what. I'm going to buy tomorrow at the open. I can't remember how many I bought. I think it was like, it wasn't a huge account that I was trading at the time. I think it was maybe like 100 shares, if that. And I'm going to buy 100 shares at the open, and we'll just see what happens. Okay? And that's exactly what I did here on this very next bar. Okay? And so I bought about 100 shares, and I think as much as I can remember, that was probably about as many as I could afford that. I went all in on this particular stock, and I said, whee! Because we opened. I bought as close to the open as I could. It went up all day. I was enjoying myself all day. I had some trading experience. And at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? I know better than this. Because this stock is going to continue to go down. There's no way that it can continue this. I'm going to go ahead and exit. So I exited pretty close towards the end of the day. And I made some really good money. I mean, that was a great trade of bar. I don't remember exactly how much money it was, but for my trading account and the fact that I was a new trader, that was a very, very significant day. Okay? And so that was the best trade I've ever made in a single day. Okay? And then the next day, I just kind of watched the market activity. It was because I had just made so much money on this stock. My best trade ever to that point. I watch the market activity, and what happens is we have a kind of a flat day. And I'm thinking about it the next night. Well, this thing's probably going to run again. And so, why don't I just buy it? I'll hold on to it for one day. You know, see how it goes. What's the worst thing that could happen? So, I bought it on the open. I watched it tank all day long. And I gave up about the same amount of money on this bar as I did on this bar. You see where I'm going with this story. I mean, I didn't take a huge loss, but that certainly wasn't as much fun. But I think it's a good story, and here's kind of the questions that I wanted to talk about, and I do have notes here. And I'm going to go out to kind of a full-term view of this particular stock, at least a really, really large picture. Okay? So just the questions. These are hypothetical. The answers are obvious, but was I right? Was I correct? Did this stock eventually come back down to earth? Yes, absolutely. Does that mean there wasn't an efficient opportunity to buy this particular instrument? It was probably the most efficient moving stock in the entire market at that particular time. At that time. Okay? And you'll see this. Have any of you guys seen a stock like this where you're just like, there's no way this is going to continue on the pace that it is? The stock cannot continue to move that fast. It's going to come back down to earth. Any of you ever watched it for months and months and months prove you wrong? It continues to go up parabolically. I love this because it talks about the concept I want to talk about. You know, price calls this type of action on a stock. It's not terribly common, but it's not terribly uncommon. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of examples on this. But he kind of refers to it as a rocket. You know, it takes an insane amount of energy to get a rocket off the ground. Okay? But once it gets out of the atmosphere, once it gets away from gravity, it's a lot easier to maintain the momentum and the course of the stock that you're currently looking for. Okay? And as it gets more news attention, as people start thinking about it, as it gets into the public eye, as Taser did back then, more people are going to trade it, and it's not going to take as much energy to continue on that path. And I just love the particular method that this pertains to. How am I doing on time, by the way? 10 minutes? Okay. Well, that's pretty good in terms of keeping my time. Every time you do a class the first time, you're wondering how long is this going to last. But I love this concept. It's looking very specifically for these stocks that are launching into orbit. Okay? And so hopefully that makes sense to you. We want to find the stocks that don't take as much energy to kind of move and propel forward. We want to find stocks that have a potential for a huge trend, one that you just wouldn't be able to believe. And we want a strategy that works around those. And it doesn't happen all the time again. But this is kind of the mentality or what we want to look for a stock like that. So in other words, if this kind of gone from, and this is split adjusted, so these aren't the actual values, but it went from basically the equivalent of 108, and at the top it was at 32. I mean, it had grown 320%, if my math is right, and at 1 and 32, I should be able to do that in my head. Tell me if I'm wrong, though. If we had a strategy around trading that particular instrument so we could take advantage of a lot of the moves while not risking a lot of money in something that was based in fact, wouldn't that be a good thing? And I would say that it is a good thing. So let's talk about the percentage above the long-term moving average systems. And I'm going to come back into this here. Okay, so there's my chart example. We already changed gears, and we talked about my best trade ever and my worst trade ever. To that point, I should say to that point. So these are designed to find those stocks that have a good opportunity for explosive potential growth. Often they're going to be small cap companies that are entering into a surge phase, is to find stocks that have a potential for dramatic movement over the next 1 to 12 months. Okay. Usually the stocks that are going to come up on these scans, the scans are based on the 200 and 400-day moving average. This is only a long system. By the time it's dropped below 100% below its long-term moving average, you probably don't want to short it. So it's just for longs. But here's the rules. We're going to basically figure out how many percent this is above its 200-day moving average. Okay? And you'll buy when the stock is actually 100% above that moving average. Okay? Most of these stocks won't have options yet. If the stock is optionable, you could look at taking an option way out there because it's going to last for a really long time. These things can literally get in a momentum where you can't believe what's going to happen. Okay? Let me show you this on the chart of Taser for just a few minutes, and I want to talk about, there are scans that are available, But let me show you this on Taser for just a second in terms of how this would work. And oh yeah, I have to show MetaStock. I almost went into one of those phases, and yell at me if I do that, but I'm not going to do it today because we're almost done. Where I start talking about a chart you guys can't see, let me know. I do it all the time. I'm getting better about not doing it though. So what I want to show you is basically what this indicator is called. It's called the percentage above the 200-day moving average. I'm going to drag that. I don't want to necessarily put this on the chart. I'm just going to put it in its own inner window. And this doesn't tell us what the moving average value it is. It's going to tell us basically how many percentage above or below its moving average is. So I usually use it in combination with a moving average. And I'll just put that on the chart real quick. Okay. I have to find moving average first. It's alphabetical. Okay, so this is a 200-day moving average, and this is the percentage above the 200-day moving average. And I'm going to merge the two scales together, and I'm just going to kind of talk about how this would be, what we're scanning for, because I think that's important. Okay, so in this particular method, what we're looking for is we're looking at a close that's at least 100% above its 200-day moving average. And as long as this stock goes parabolic on us, we're going to continue to hold on to it. Okay? Based on the entry rules, we should have an entry right about here on the chart. Okay? And you'll notice it's going to give us a lot of room to actually move. It's not until it comes down and starts to float back to down to earth is when we're actually going to sell it, which means we will give up a part of the top. That's just going to be the way that happens because it's a very long-term system. Okay? Right here is where we'd actually look to exit this trade. Is where it comes back down below the 100% line of the 200-day moving average. Okay. Now I'd argue a few things here that are very, very obvious. This is a strategy that did a lot better than my strategy for Taser. I think you'd all agree with that. Even though that we didn't get in exactly, I mean, we got out fairly away from the top, which is usually how you're going to play this play. We did give ourselves enough room to go through with a lot of really significant market manipulation, which is usually how these things move. And we did make a fairly substantial profit. Split adjusted, again, that was nowhere near this price before it split. But this was 78 cents to $17. And I would say that's a very, very good way to trade a stock that has explosive growth like that. Much better than my strategy of let's buy at the open and see what happens. And that worked for me really well once, but it certainly didn't make that amount of profit, and it worked really against me once. So, again, with the scans, we can come in here. And the methods are the same. It's just the amount of moving averages that it's looking for. I did scan both the 200-day moving average and the 400-day moving average against everything that trades on NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange today, just to see if we had a hit. We didn't. So in that particular case, there's no opportunities like that in the market. But that doesn't mean there won't be tomorrow, and that's why we can go in and run that scan anytime we want to. And it's definitely a good method to trade with, and it's definitely looking for, again, huge movements as opposed to looking at little movements and looking for little things. That's what we want to focus on. Let me go ahead and get back in here. And Emin says there's great ways to trade this stock. Okay. Somebody says, I am also a cop. It is very painful how we had to get tased. Oh, yeah, I hear it's very painful. Very, very painful. So is losing the money on that second trade I took on that stock, but I'm sure getting tased would have been more painful. Let's go ahead and get back in here for a little bit. If you have a question and I didn't talk about it, ask it again. I'll get to it. And again, you know, we just had a little bit of a chance to talk about some of these. These are the indicators that are in the program. There's a lot of them. I've talked about the ones that I felt like I could explain fairly well. But my point in having this whole site is I just want to make sure that we're not doing a full demonstration of what Big Trend ToolKit is. There's a lot of powerful things in here. It works better if you understand how the tools work and combine them. And that's how Price uses it. Okay. Here's the systems. You know, these are all different systems. That means they have expert advisors. That means they have system tests. That means they have scans. Okay, so there's quite a few of these. Would encourage you to learn about them, use them, understand them, and play with the ones that you like. Let me go ahead and go next. The price on the Big Trends Toolkit, and I think it's worth every penny. I mean, basically, here's a guy that has not only been studying the market for 20 years, because a lot of people can study the market 20 years and they're no better than they were on day number 1. But it's a proven market timer. Somebody that's done really a good job of understanding the markets, and according to Timer Digest, has been the best market timer of the whole year for the entire year several times. So normally the charge on his actual add-on is $4.99. I'm going to give you a price discount of $4.49. I'm going to give you a 30-day money-back guarantee on that. This is the way it works. If you get it, you don't like it, you can send it back to us, you get a refund. Okay? I like those kind of, I'm a trader at heart. I like a no-risk proposition. This is a no-risk proposition. So get it, install it. If you don't like it, send it back. Okay? Now, if I do know that approximately 60% of you did not have MetaStock, at least that's, I wrote down 58.6% of you didn't have MetaStock when I did my polling question at the front. So if you don't have MetaStock, I'll give you a free trial of MetaStock too. So you won't pay anything for MetaStock. You can do MetaStock end of day, or you can do MetaStock real time. You will pay for the toolkit. That's on a money back guarantee. And to do that, go to metastock.com/bigtrends, or call my sales guys. They're very knowledgeable. They can answer questions about the software and the product. The phone number for that is 800-252-9901. Feedback from me if you want to get a hold of me. You're more than welcome to, Jay. I will get back to you if you have questions. I'm going to put my ThompsonReuters.com. That's my email address, 801-270-3162. George asks, are these codes open or closed? They're all open. It's 100% open. If you want to see how we're generating a buy signal, you can go in and look at it. If you want to see how the acceleration bands are calculated, you can do it. If you want to combine systems into different, combine the buy signals from one into another one, you can totally do it. It's a totally open system. Did I ask, can you discuss MAC to divergence? And I'm going to say no, I can't discuss that, because I'm not prepared to discuss that. So, but if you want to, I can send you some information about it. Just drop me a message. I'd be more than happy to do that. I spent probably a good few hours kind of figuring out exactly what I wanted to talk about with Big Trends Toolkit. My biggest concern, to be completely frank with you guys, is I really love this product. It's one of my favorite products, and certainly, I'm definitely a bit biased. In fact, there's not any other MetaStock product that has MetaStock expert advisor commentary that Jeff Gibby created. They went in and fixed my code after I was done writing it. There's no other product that's going to have a manual that was written by Jeff Gibby either. So I'm very incredibly proud of the product. My main concern was to be able to talk about it in a way that you could see what the value was, and that you could understand because I believe there is a lot of validity to finding not just trends, but big trends. I believe there's a lot of validity to the methods that Price actually uses in implementing systems. Okay, let's find things that are moving efficiently to a trend. Let's step over the little opportunities because we want to focus on the big opportunities. I have a lot of respect for the stuff that he's put together. I'll get off of my soapbox, but I can't say it enough. I'm incredibly proud of this product. You should own it. All right, guys. I appreciate your time. Appreciate your coming to my class. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. I'm going to go spend some time with the kids. I hope you guys have an enjoyable evening. I appreciate your spending an hour with me. And if you have any questions, just reach out to me. Thanks.